It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions. Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Thursday? We do. From the DIXILINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to Hacksaw's Headlines, our Thursday podcast as we kick off a great sports weekend. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, along with my co-host John Riley. We welcome you to our end of the week podcast with a ton of topics on the table. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXILINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 stores in San Diego to serve you. You've got projects. These are the people that you should talk to about materials. And if you're looking for ideas, they'd be glad to be a consultant. That's DIXILINE. And by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido, where right now, North County Eye Center, for all of our followers on Livestream, is offering free eye exams and 20% off on your frames for your new glasses. Call DIXILINE. Tell them you're a Hacksaw podcast listener. Cash in now. We're all going to need help with our eyes sometime. Get free eye exams right now. North County Eye Center, Poway, Escondido. John Riley, before we put topics on the table, and there's a lot of late-breaking hot stuff that we're going to touch today, just describe what happens at the end of the podcast with Fans Forum, because I don't know anybody else in the country that's doing what we're doing, giving fans the chance to jump on board, express an opinion, and in some cases pile on with Fans Forum.
Okay, yeah, this is your chance to get involved in Hacksaw's Headlines. If you have a question or comment for Lee, just drop it in the live chat on Facebook, X, or Twitter. We'll get you involved in Fans Forum at the conclusion of Hacksaw's Headlines.
And have you joined Hacksaw's Insiders Group? We put together this club, get you on the emailing list for all the unique special things we're doing. You can register. It's absolutely free. LeeHacksawHamilton.com. That's my website. There's a big orange box. Fill it out. Become part of the Insiders Club. We do want you to share. Tell your friends everything we're doing. We want you to subscribe so you'll get all the alerts every time that guy puts something up on the YouTube channel, all hours of day and night. John, we got a lot of topics to talk about. Let's talk about the topic that everybody is still discussing nationwide.
Oh, Bill Walton. I mean, just the outpouring of love for this guy. Unbelievable.
The nation responds to Big Red, whether it's from UCLA, fans, friends, alums, whether it's people across the NBA, people in this community with what he's done. I tried to put together just a quick list of some of the most quotable quotes that people said or people wrote about Bill Walton. They called him a beacon of life. The world is a bit less bright with Walton's passing. A flower child who became a beautiful man, a champion at every level of life, passion for helping people, a towering man as a player and a person, a selfless star, a life of charity, and a zest for life. He was wacky, he was wild, he was wonderful. He was a guy who spoke in sentences that had no periods. He was San Diego's favorite son, San Diego from birth to death. Everybody talking positively about crossing paths with Big Red.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
I mean, the stories and it seems like a lot of NBA broadcasters and other people in sports have their Bill Walton story where Bill Walton has really touched their life. I saw someone else make a comment that says, it's one thing to remember them after they've passed, but we should have celebration of life when they're still alive. I mean, we should have had a parade for Bill Walton long ago.
It was really eerie to me when I thought about him passing. This past weekend, last Sunday, was the final minute of the Pac-12 network. It was the final athletic competition in the Pac-12 conference, which is going away.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, and Bill was an unbelievable critic of what happened.
Yeah.
I could see Bill raising his hand and said, Pac-12 is gone. My life's work is done. And of course, he passed away hours after the final event in the Pac-12 conference. What a cool guy, remembered for a wide variety of everything.
Yeah, I mean, imagine living a life like Bill Walton. I mean, that would be a satisfying life, wouldn't it?
Very much so. And I think he was satisfied because his heart was in to everything he spent time on. We go from that basketball story to back on the court and the next basketball story.
Yeah, Lakers, Clippers. I see the Clippers did they sign Lou for a long-term deal?
Yeah, let's just talk about what's going on with these two teams. Tyronn Lue signs a 4-year, $78 million extension to stay with the LA Clippers. Their logo pictured there on the right. The owner, Steve Ballmer, is committed. He called this guy the cornerstone of our franchise, the pillar of what we're going to become. Now, he's already signed Kawhi Leonard to a contract extension. Now he gets Lou locked down so he does not go across the hallway to the Lakers and interview. Next thing, he's got to make a decision on what they're going to do with Paul George and then what they're going to do with James Harden. Their summer's work is far from over, but they're going to be stable because they got Tyronn Lue, and obviously they got Kawhi Leonard, and now they're going to have to sort and sift. In terms of the Lakers, second-round interviews now underway for their coaches. And this is the coaching candidate. They're going after their fourth head coach under Rob Pelinka, the general manager. I still maintain Sam Cassell is the right guy. However, the rumor mill says that J.J. Redick is making contacts to, quote, put a coaching staff in place. And it sure looks like the Lakers might be, by the weekend, reaching across the table, and they're going to offer it to a former NBA player who never, ever coached a game anywhere. Might be a bright light, might be an X and O's genius, might be a metrics advanced intelligent guy, but he's never coached. And I just have this fear factor that they're going to walk all over him as a first-year coach. The other Lakers story, Bronny James stays in the NBA draft. He's had explosive workouts at the combines, has done very well, but this is a kid, when he lined up, not talking about shooting against air or in a college scrimmage, averaged 4 points a game and lost his starting job at USC. There seemed to be an awful lot of pressure on the Lakers. Spend your second-round draft pick on Bronny James. He's had 4 individual workouts. I was told the Lakers, Chicago Bulls, Utah Jazz, and San Antonio. But his agent has indicated, we're not taking an NBA G League contract. We're not taking a two-way contract, regardless of where he's drafted. Now, to me, it's like Bronny James is using his legacy status as LeBron's kid to try to force his way to be on an NBA roster with a guaranteed deal. So I don't know how this is going to work out, I guess, to a degree. I'm just a little bit turned off by this whole situation.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Bronny James is forcing the issue. I think his father is forcing the issue here. The Lakers, taking a second-round pick, a lot of those second-round picks never make this big squad anyways.
And they wind up in the G League on a two-way deal. And he said, no, we're not taking that. That's what the agent says.
Yeah, I mean, come on. So Bronny James, just needs to get in line, and prove himself.
Earn it.
Yeah, earn it. Exactly. J.J. Redick, doesn't it strike you like, remember back in the day when Pat Riley took over the Lakers and they said, or was it him or was it Phil Jackson of the Bulls where they said, he just rolls the ball out for him to play?
That was Phil Jackson, but Pat Riley was on Broadcast Row doing TV. Mm-hmm. Now, he had been an assistant NBA coach, and I pulled him off TV. You're the guy. Well, that guy became a great coach. That guy became a great NBA general manager.
Oh, he absolutely. I mean, he proved it. But all these coaches in a short period of time with the Lakers reminds me of the Padres and all the things that they've gone through, and that it's not stable. And then for the Clippers, good on them getting Lou. But, you got Lou, you got Kawhi, but after that, there's still question marks.
Well, there's question marks about what Paul George is going to do. And then question mark, what kind of relationship do you want to have with James Harden? And then the rest of the roster, led by Russell Westbrook, becomes a big issue. You're a basketball fan. Last words on Bill Walton. Join us now in Fans Forum. Lakers line is open. Clipper callers are invited. Text us right now in the chat box on Fans Forum. We go from hoops. Let's talk baseball.
Baseball. Angel Hernandez and the Negro Leagues. These are great storylines, Lee.
Yeah, I'm going to say some things that will probably offend a few people. Too bad for you. Listen to what I say and then go into Fans Forum and tell me what you think. Can anybody explain to me how one of the lowest rated umpires in all of Major League Baseball, in this era of instant replay and constant evaluation, retains his job since 1999? How is this possible? He really, front and center, was one of the worst credible guys in the game. Shame on the umpires union for allowing this situation to exist for so long. Went back and did some checking. He held his job despite incompetence, despite mistakes, despite having all his plays overturned in the most important time of the year. And then he turned around and he sued baseball twice for discrimination because he was not promoted to be a crew chief. He was not given assignments like All-Star games, playoffs, and World Series. Both court cases got thrown out of court in the Court of Appeals. And yet he maintained his position. And here's the umpires union umpiring the integrity of the game, allowing this guy to keep the job while keeping qualified men and women who are in AAA baseball living low pay, bad travel, crummy lifestyle with the hope of getting to the show blocked by that guy. And you could say the media was unfair. You could say the fans were unfair. Video replay does not lie. I went back and checked on background on him. He had, in the most important time of the year, playoff series, Cleveland-Boston, American League Championship Series, he had 3 blown calls at first base, overruled in a 4-inning span in the playoffs, and yet he retained his job. Another time, he had 3 replays overruled in 1 Yankee playoff game, and yet he was allowed to do this. And he had a quick trigger finger. He threw guys out in the first batter of a game. He threw managers out on the first pitch of a game. You talk about ego, just completely out of control. And then eventually they stopped giving him assignments, marquee assignments. Yeah, he could umpire the Kansas City Houston game, on week 8 of the season. Didn't have any bearing on anything, but he got no choice assignments. He sued. He lost the lawsuits. He appealed twice. Court of Appeals threw them out. Why did baseball allow this to happen? This is a terrible thing, but in my heart, they refused to fire him in what I would view as reverse discrimination because he was Cuban and his last name ended in a Z. And they were not going to toss a Hispanic overboard because then they'd get sued for reverse discrimination. But they practiced reverse discrimination. Do you know how many good umpires are stalled at AAA? Because guys like that. And the video does not lie. Yeah, that's the biggest issue of all. So he woke up 2 months ago and said, I don't enjoy this anymore. And he got berated. I mean, social media just skewered him nonstop. Fans skewered him. The media skewered him. Deservedly so. So I'm just shocked that MLB would allow this go on and the umpires union would protect him through all the incompetence. And John Riley says,
well, he's been a joke for a long time. I mean, he is the stereotype, the guy you think of about horrible umpires. And you're right. But the part of the story that I was surprised by is that he has had a legal feud with Major League Baseball. So maybe they were afraid to fire him, regardless of racial issues, that this guy might be wanting to litigate more. And it was just easier to keep him at arm's length. But it's also surprising if the umpire union is protecting him. That's weak sauce right there. Now, what's the process about how AAA umpires can move up, and can MLB umpires be demoted and go down to AAA?
They usually don't fire them. They tell them to retire, and a bunch do. And there is a cyclical turnover of major league umpires, and therefore they get pulled up from AAA. They get pulled up in vacation relief in AAA. Job of an umpire is long and it's lonely. You're on the road a lot. And you have no family with you, and you just have the umpires. You have no camaraderie. There's no teammates to go hang with. So it's a tough job. But for him to maintain his position for that long and block men and women in the minor leagues at AAA, because it is a progression going from the New York Penn League to the Pacific Coast League to getting in the show, I think it's terrible. That's one story in baseball. The other story involves that great player. His name is Josh Gibson, legendary catcher, 1930s into the 1940s. Here's the backdrop. Major League Baseball has approved not only the continued admittance of great stars from the old Negro leagues, they have now indoctrinated all the statistics from the black leagues that started in 1920 that run till 1954 when the black leagues eventually folded after the Jackie Robinson barrier was broken down. They have now allowed all the baseball statistics from the, quote, Negro leagues to be incorporated at the Hall of Fame on their website with all the statistics of our great stars, yesteryear from Babe Ruth through Ted Williams to where we are today. That's not a problem except this. As they formed a research committee to dig up the statistics of the Negro Leagues to validate their stars, and we knew who the names were, from Josh Gibson to Cool Papa Bell to Satchel Paige. What they found was fragmented statistics, and that's a big issue. They found box scores. They found newspaper stories. Well, that validates what Josh Gibson did with the Homestead Grays. But there were chunks of seasons in which there were no box scores and there were no newspaper stories, etc. And what they did was they went out and they took not just stats from the Negro Leagues, but the Negro League teams they barnstormed. They played exhibition games. They'd play a major league team. They'd play minor league teams. They'd play beer league teams. They played the House of David, a Jewish traveling semi-pro team.
House of David?
Exactly. I've got pictures to verify that. But they went back in these exhibitions and they took the stats and box scores of the exhibitions and they incorporated them with the Negro League numbers, which in essence kind of drove all the statistics of all the superstars from the black leagues up to the point now that Josh Gibson has superseded everything Ty Cobb did, everything Babe Ruth did, everything Ted Williams did. But Major League Baseball structure in the American League and the National League and the old Federal League, those were mandated league-sanctioned games. They took the Negro Leagues that had an American League and a National League and the Negro Leagues, but then they took all these exhibitions that they had access to data and they poured them into the pot and mixed it up and said, these stats count. That to me is stunning because the NFL does not include AFL stats.
Mm-hmm.
NBA history does not include the ABA. NHL does not include what the World Hockey Association did. We're going to take Harlem Globetrotter games and put that in the NBA and make it. So that's the only deficiency to what they did. They have every right to honor all the great players of yesteryear, and they're virtually all gone, John. And there's hardly any video of any of those guys. But we have the stories and I mean the greatness of Buck Leonard, Buck O'Neill, Satchel Paige, and the stories those guys told, the greatness of these players. But this whole how they gathered the statistics really bothers me. For example, the new all-time leader, if you went to the Baseball Hall of Fame today and punched it up in batting average, it's not Ty Cobb anymore at 367. It was Josh Gibson at 372. The all-time single-season batting average used to be Ted Williams at 406. It is now Josh Gibson, 1943, 460.
Wow.
In the Negro Leagues. Slugging percentage used to be the Bambino, 690. It is now Josh Gibson, 718. OPS used to be the Babe, 1164 OPS. Is now Josh Gibson, 1177. Slugging percentage used to be your guy, Barry Bonds, 863.
Barry Bonds.
Josh Gibson, 974. This is not to denigrate what he did with the Homestead Grays, but the fact that they took all these statistics from these exhibition games and these semi-pro games they had access to and poured it into the mix, that's a problem. You know, how do you equate Gibson's accomplishment and the level of competition? That to me is an issue. How do you equate Gibson never faced Babe Ruth, the pitcher? Gibson never batted against Nolan Ryan. How do you equate Satchel Paige that era versus the great Hank Greenberg, the Detroit slugger from that era? They deserve to be in the hall, but do they deserve to have an asterisk on their plaque when you put the stats up there? Because it just wasn't Negro League games. It was all this other stuff. And then I thought to myself, I wrote a column on it today, and I've gotten a lot of response. Did MLB do this to honor the greats? Did MLB do this out of guilt because blacks were barred from baseball till Jackie Robinson, Larry Doby broke the barrier in 1947-48? Did they fear putting an asterisk up in a Hall of Fame plaque with these guys, with their stats? Because all of a sudden it'd be separate, but equal. It's a really big issue. Yeah. I interviewed as a sports talk show host, some here in San Diego, prior to that in Phoenix, and before that in Cleveland. I interviewed Cool Papa Bell, Buck Leonard, Buck O'Neill, Will Foster, Quincy Troop, great catcher, Monty Irvin, Larry Doby, Sam Jethro, and the stars that you would recognize who started their careers in 53, 54 in the Negro Leagues that then folded, Ernie Banks, Willie Mays, Henry Aaron. The stories they told were amazing. But how should baseball have handled this? So you tell me, asterisk, make a mistake with the mathematics and how they compiled them, or should we just accept Josh Gibson's greatness as Josh Gibson's greatness, regardless of what the numbers say? And John Riley says,
it's tricky. This is very tricky, especially in the culture of America today in 2024 with woke and everything else. But it is clearly a stain in the Major League Baseball history. It's like the original sin of baseball, and they have to correct it. Now, we could make arguments comparing players from different eras that never played each other, just in Major League Baseball, not even talking about the Negro Leagues. But there's always various levels of competition. Back in the day, there was shorter seasons. Now there are longer seasons. I mean, none of them, Hank Greenberg didn't have to play against any of those Negro League pitchers either, who were also fantastic players. I mean, what's your take on the quality of competition in the Negro League versus MLB? Were they on par? Was one better than the other?
Well, I think Major League Baseball was better, but they had great superstars, African Americans, who were never allowed to cross the street to play. So they were playing against other great people, but not top to bottom. But see, my beef is not the rosters and who they were as players. My beef is, how can you take these exhibition games against semi-pro teams and the House of David Jewish touring team and take all those stats as exhibitions and put them in and say, that's why Josh Gibson has this all-time record great batting average? Maybe I'm too much a purist. I mean, I honor the players. I love going to Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame. You've never been to Cooperstown, you should
No,
go.
I've been there.
You should go to 617 area code. But I have no problem with the players getting in. I just think the statistics stats are kind of skewed, but that's me. I'll ask baseball fan out there, jump into the chat box on Fans Forum. Do you buy what I say, or am I being too much of a purist and we should just honor the guys because these guys were great?
Well, how many home runs would Josh Gibson have if today's Oakland A's were playing in the Negro League? Right?
A lot of people of the opinion that if we could compile all the records, Josh would have hit 700.
Oh, yeah.
Easy home runs.
See, in my opinion, you include them. You go include them all, and you don't necessarily need an asterisk. You just need to tell the full story. I mean, it's the same thing with Pete Rose or all these other guys that have been banned. I think you include them, you show their data, you show the records, and then you include a paragraph on the plaque that explains the situation so people can take it in context. Now, you're comparing stats. Like imagine talking about Josh Gibson. What about Bob Gibson? He pitched in an era when the mound was a mile up in the air and he was dominant. And then they switched the rules. And so, it's all apples and oranges in the end. I say throw all the data in, include the story, and move forward.
Old-time baseball fan. Fans Forum box is open. Give us an opinion on that situation. One other baseball topic here before we get to halftime.
Padres just finished up the series with the Marlins. A lot of smack talking going on.
Roller coaster ride continues. I mean, how do you beat the Dodgers 2 of 3? How do you get whacked by the Yankees? How do you turn around and lose to the Rockies and then lose a really ugly game to Miami? Now they go on the road. End of the day, the Padres are still a 500 baseball team at this point, and now they got a problem. Yu Darvish has a hamstring issue. This is the third different injury that he's had before we get to the 1st of June. And of course, Joe Musgrove's had 2 different types of setbacks here, and now they go on the road. I guess it's hard for me to sit there and fathom how a $160 million payroll can be a nickel and dime offense so many games. They just scuffle. I mean, you're the one. You put it out there in a text to me. How the hell can you have the bases loaded, nobody out, and all the beef in the Padre batting order come in, and all those guys are still on the bases when the third out's recorded, and nobody scored? To me, it's just driving me crazy about what Padre baseball is right now. It looks to me like it's a little bit of a fatigued baseball team. Now they go to Kansas City to meet what I think is going to be the surprise team in baseball. Hell, they're going to face Seth Lugo, the ex-Padre, who's 8-1. Wow. And they're going to face Michael Wacha, and then they get the Angels. It's hard for me to believe that this lineup, that batting order, this payroll, 13-19 at home, 8-12 against bad teams, and 15-17 against anybody that shows up on the schedule with a losing record. I don't know. It's the same player doing the same thing we've seen this year, we saw last year through a couple of disappointing seasons. And John Riley says about the roller coaster ride.
It is a roller coaster ride. I think that's the thing, is that we see this team play so well sometimes, and then other times so terrible. I mean, it's one thing if you've got Chris Denorfia in that lineup, then your expectations are low. But this is a team we thought would be a playoff team, and technically, I guess they would still qualify if the season ended now. What did you take on the whole Mike Schilt post-game presser yesterday when he pushed back on this roller coaster idea?
He always pushes back. Don't you dare question my guys. My guys are committed, blah, 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 blah. Your guys are one game over 500. Please, take some responsibility. Feel free to critique and analyze with a critical vein what needs to be said. Instead, he always pushes back. And unfortunately, there's too many, quote, media cheerleaders here. Everything is beautiful. And, the Padre flagship station, we're not even to June 1st. And what's their topic of conversation? Well, we'll look at the wild card race. How can we get into the wild card race? We'll get the last wild card spot. Jeez, Pizzo, quit being a cheerleader. So, we'll see. If this health issue just continues to flare, that's going to be an issue. If it's not 100% Darvish, 100% Musgrove, that to me is going to be a problem. Now, I'm not going to be critical every minute of every day because I think we have to do this. How about AJ? AJ finding Jeremiah Estrada.
Wow, that guy's
AJ
great.
And what Suarez has evolved into. And then obviously some of the other acquisitions, the quote, free agent street rentals that have panned out so far. And maybe David Peralta can be what David Peralta was just a couple of years ago from the left-handed side, because the Padres are getting some pretty good productivity out of some of the other street free agents that they signed. But it's not a complete team, and I'm really worried about the fatigue factor because Machado and Tatis and Kim and Cronenworth, they're playing a hell of a lot of ball. There's hardly any off days for those guys. And, pal, it's a 162-game schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal out there, but I'll tell you what, it goes back to, remember we talk about Bill Parcells, right? What's he say? You are what your record says you are. And right now they're just meh. They're 500, a game up, a game below 500. They got to put together a winning streak. And once they do, then, they win 7 out of 9 series, but then when you lose 3 in a row of the Rockies, it all kind of flats out. So they've got to get on a 5, 6, 10-game winning streak, and then they're in business.
I concur with you. Padre fan, Fans Forum is open for your opinion. Jump on board right now on our podcast. We get to halftime. Our podcast is brought to you by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. Look at that offer on the screen. North County says thank you for being part of this podcast. We want you to call and make an appointment. You'll get a free eye exam, and you'll get 20% off the frames if you're purchasing new glasses. These people are special. And it doesn't matter whether it's just eye exams, glasses, contacts, or something much more significant. When you need direction and help with your eyes, we want you to consider North County Eye Center and look at that opportunity, a free eye exam. Contact North County Eye Center and just say, thanks for being part of HACKSAW'S podcast. I would like to make an exam. And our podcast is also brought to you by DIXILINE Lumber and Home Centers. Does not matter what the project is. Doors and windows, front doors, cabinets in each of the rooms. He and I have both used DIXILINE Lumber. You got projects inside, projects for the home, projects for the office, projects for the patio, up by the pool. Think DIXILINE for materials. Think DIXILINE Lumber if you're looking for ideas. These are who these people are at DIXILINE. The second half of our Thursday podcast, heading towards this great sports weekend. Just a reminder, I write on my website every day. If you like sports, you should check it every morning. It's absolutely free. You won't believe the volume of information available at leehacksawhamilton.com. Also, register to join our insiders group. You get to hang with us. You get to on our emailing list. There's a big orange box right on the front page of my website. Fill it out so you can be part of what we do. Subscribe so you'll get alerts every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, which is virtually every day. And we want you to share. Tell your friends who we are, where we're located right now. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a 5-star rating because we can use all the friends we can get. John, we go to the second half. We got topics to talk about here involving the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL, 18-game schedule. Is there a little pushback right now?
Roger Goodell, a week ago, talked about all likelihood, we're going to present a package to go to 18 regular season games. We'll have just 2 exhibition games. You can have joint workouts. This is all about the bank. This is all about the green. This is all about money. Well, the union has to negotiate this. Any change in that type of scheduling has to involve collective bargaining. The union is saying, well, we're not agreeing to an 18-game schedule right now. We need things to be considered. And the union has started to push back. And it's not just the fact that each player is going to be paid more money because they're playing 18 regular season games. Not just the fact there's going to be more money going to gross revenue, which means the salary cap will go up. They want better work conditions. And out of nowhere, the NFL Players Association went public and said, John, we want the elimination of all OTA workouts. Now, the OTAs have become a 5-week thing in the offseason. You bring your draft picks in right after the draft. That's a rookie orientation thing. And then you bring everybody in for a 3-week window and you do classroom work, you do on-the-field work, you do weight training, etc. Then you have a full mini camp for everybody, rookies, free agents, street free agents, undrafted free agents, and veterans. That's 1 full week that's mandatory. And then everybody goes to camp at the end of July. The union said, no. We don't want this to be an 11-month-a-year physical slog for all of our players. You're going to 18 games, we got to change things. So they've come back and they said, we want you to eliminate the OTAs as they're operated right now. And what they plain and simple said, you're allowed to bring your draft picks in for only classroom work, cannot be on the field. No physical testing. When you bring the group of players in for the 3-week OTA window, strictly classroom work, nobody on the field, no weight training program, none of that. Now, if you got injured players and there might be a rehab thing component to that. He says, we want OTAs on the field ended, strictly educational, strictly installation in your playbook, etc. No practices. They are proposing that training camps will open a week earlier because of an 18-game schedule, and that once we get beyond July 4th, everybody's camp will open a week earlier, and then boom, rest of training camp to the start of the season. I think rookies need to have OTAs. You got to, obviously, classroom work is important. If the union is saying we don't want conditioning to be part of this, that's a detriment to the players because the players need to really get their cardio and their conditioning up, and you can only do that in the off season. You don't lift every day and all that other stuff Monday through Friday during the regular season. So I think there's an increased injury risk if you're not going to have physicality and OTAs, weightlifting, etc. They want clubs to cease and desist, quit badgering my player that he's got to be there to weightlift all off season in the confines of the facility. It's complex, but like anything else, as it relates to the CBA, it's going to be negotiated. And if the union and the owners are going to 18, it's going to be more than just money going to 18. It's going to have to also incorporate changes in the OTA, and I think there'll be changes in the size of the roster. I can't imagine a 58-man roster trying to play an 18-game schedule. And what they may do, and the reason the union is going to wind up pushing for that is those are full salaries. That's not a 50% remuneration for some kid on a developmental squad that gets this much. It will be a full salary for veteran players. So this is going to be a long pull back and forth between the two. But do you think your 49ers need to have OTAs with all the things it encompasses that I just explained?
Well, clearly they need the classroom work, like you said, and frankly, some players even today need a lot more classroom work because so much of it is mental. But how many players have had season-ending or career-ending injuries in these OTAs?
A bunch. Now, are we talking 15 season-ending injuries, 30 season-ending injuries? It's a big issue. We've had a lot of ruptured Achilles tendons in OTAs because these guys on the practice field, they're exploding off the line of scrimmage to run their pass route, and the new play formations are running for the quarterbacks. That's where that stuff happens. They're in helmets and they're in shells. There's not supposed to be a lot of physical contact, but that means you're running up and in and you're planting and you're going. You can explode your knee. You can explode, you get a cleat caught and blow out an Achilles. And that has happened last 3 or 4 years at a bigger number. But again, I go back to my thing. There has to be weight training, and it has to be supervised weight training. So I don't know where the middle ground on this is.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of high school sports and how they're limiting the practices, particularly during the summer workouts. And, the sport doesn't necessarily suffer. I mean, these kids have been running and lifting weights in college and as pros. I mean, I don't object to it. I mean, if there's got to be a give and take in that negotiation. But yeah, classroom work, by all means, they need more of that.
On we go from NFL football, college football. Oh, boy, we got some hot topics here.
Yeah, Coach Prime in the news with the SEC.
SEC has one set of problems. Colorado's got another set of problems that has just started. Let's talk about Coach Prime. He's got the quarterback son, Shedeur, is a great talent, probably going to be a first-round pick. He's got a cornerback son by the name of Shiloh. We find out now that Shiloh was arrested on a terrible assault charge while he was in high school that resulted in severe injuries to a security guard at a school. Deion Sanders ran 3 prep schools. He was the CFO, he was the athletic director, he was a football coach in Florida and Texas when he retired. All 3 were shuttered. All 3 were shut down because of financial impropriety. All 3 were sanctioned because of academic issues. Mm-hmm. His son assaulted a security guard at one of these prep schools. Severe internal injuries. Somehow, some way, he didn't get charged with deadly assault. The man sued him, lost $11.9 million. Sanders was forced to pay $11.9. Shiloh Sanders never paid it. He kept changing addresses. They could not locate him. The father did not cooperate. A court of appeals has ruled that Shiloh Sanders must pay the $11.9 million plus $215,000 to an insurance company that was also defrauded. And Deion's not taking part in this at all. I thought fathers were responsible for their underage sons. At least I thought. Mm-hmm. So that's a big issue. And now they're saying Shiloh has just filed for bankruptcy. Shiloh had over $2 million in NIL money for 2 years, and he's filed for bankruptcy to hide the money. It's a big credibility issue for the kid and to a degree, I think, the father. So there's that story. And John Riley, who's been a big Coach Prime fan, says,
well, first of all, how in the heck can Shiloh Sanders come up with $11.9 million? I mean, he hasn't even earned that in NIL. So I think they're going after the deep pockets of dad for this.
Isn't dad responsible for what his 16-year-old kid did?
Well, that's always tricky there, right? In that young adulthood and who's
gray area.
It is gray. But in the end, Shiloh's the guy that did the assault, not Coach Prime. Although you can question his fatherhood skills in that whole mess. But he's always going to be in the spotlight. Wherever Deion goes, he rubs people the right way and the wrong way. He just creates a ruckus everywhere he is. In my opinion, more for the good than for the bad. I like Coach Prime and his leadership skills. But this is Shiloh. He's the defensive back, not Shedeur, the quarterback.
Right.
But Shedeur, the quarterback, is probably the top NIL guy in the country, isn't he?
He's living on the edge, Mercedes-Benz at age 20 and all that stuff. So that's one story. The other story is in the Southeastern Conference. You and I have kind of talked, argued back and forth about college athletics is so out of control. But then you don't have a problem with the NIL, and you don't have a problem with the bleep and transfer.
Not at all.
Southeastern Conference held their football meetings this past week. And Greg Sankey, who's very influential, commissioner of the conference, met with the coaches. The coaches, John, are up in arms. We know that this new lawsuit in which every school now is going to have $22 million a year that will be funded to all their athletes and all their athletic programs. The SEC is discussing, haven't proposed it yet, and now it's a firefight with the coaches. The SEC is discussing, with all the money they're making and all the money, they hand out $66 million per school in media rights fees to everybody in the SEC.
Wow.
They're proposing we need to get this under control. They are proposing an 85-man roster, not an unlimited scholarship roster. It's got to go back to 85. And they just proposed no walk-ons. You got your 85 at Bama and at Auburn and Ole Miss and Mississippi State. No walk-ons. Coaches lost their mind when Sankey brought this up to them. And they said it's absolutely not. Walk-on college football programs are part of the big picture of college football. Walk-ons gives that right tackle a chance to go in to be a college player under the tutelage of your offensive line coach.
Yeah.
Walk-ons give that backup quarterback a chance maybe to play and maybe become a scholarship athlete because he wasn't coming in the front door. And the SEC says there's a limit to how much we're going to pay every one of these athletes. Football, to the Olympic sports, to baseball, whatever. We need to put a lid on football, even though the volumes of money that's coming in the front door is amazing. Coaches are just beyond themselves right now. And they say, oh, so we have our 85 scholarships at Auburn. We can't touch anybody else. Those guys are going to go to other schools. They're going to wind up at Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to wind up at a lower Division I program like the Mountain West or the Mid-American. Or some guys might be in 1AA football. It's opportunities other places. They want the opportunity for them to corral not only just their 85 scholarships, but Texas has got 35 walk-ons on their program. Mm-hmm. And Steve Sarkisian said, I'm developing 35 non-scholarship players to become scholarship players. Why should I have to give those guys up so they can go to Texas Southern or somewhere else? So I don't know. It's very complicated. This thing has not sorted itself out, but man, there were fireworks at the SEC meetings, and these coaches are really peeved that the SEC, with the volume of revenue they're bringing in and what they're distributing, 66 mil per school, is now trying to squeeze the football program and limit expenditures. And football fan John Riley says,
well, it is weird how the money is exploding and yet they're whittling down the roster. I agree. They need to have walk-ons. I mean, we've seen a lot of cases of walk-ons not only performing really well, but getting scholarships. And really, if they're a walk-on, they don't get a scholarship. So, I mean, how much is this really costing the team, the conference? You know, because the NIL is not everyone gets the same amount. All right. I mean, they'll have individual NIL deals.
Yeah, but that's going to change with the new lawsuit that was just settled. And each school is going to have $22 million to distribute. Now, there will be the NIL factor there, but the NCAA wants to take control of the NIL and put a roof on that everybody's operating with the same set of monies going forward. Now, this is you and I talking in almost June of 2024 that this will get solved, but a year from today, they still might not have the specifics, the logistics of how they're going to execute NIL money. And the NCAA just, at this point is trying to get through Congress to give them the antitrust exemption so they can put everything under their own umbrella and one set of rules for Mississippi State and Oregon State and all that.
Well, there are things they can still do. Like on a road game, they don't need to bring the walk-ons with them because
they usually don't.
Yeah, they usually don't. But even if you have 85 on your roster, all 85 of them don't play, right? I mean,
no, they're active. They could play.
They could. But like an NFL has like a 56-man roster?
58.
58?
Plus the developmental squad.
Yeah, so colleges have like 20 more players. I mean, I can't imagine they're all going to get into the game. I mean, so that you could whittle that thing down to like 80 or 75 in terms of the people that play and leave the other guys at home, and they can still work out and be part of the team, and you can save a couple of bucks.
There's an expense factor that'll have 35 walk-ons at Texas. There is a huge expense factor.
Oh, yeah.
But those kids are insurance policies when guys get hurt. Those kids are late developers under coaching that became established players. You know, Stetson Bennett, who led Georgia to back-to-backs, he was a walk-on. He was a JUCO transfer walk-on who became an NFL draft pick because they coached him up. That's a prime example of SEC football. Okay, Fans Forum is open. You're a college football fan. If you wish to comment on Coach Prime, you got something to say about this whole SEC controversy, fire away. John, let's go to the NFL.
The NFL, J.J. Watt, is he coming back?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This came out of nowhere. J.J. Watt, great career, a lot of injuries, Houston Texans. J.J. Watt is thinking about coming back. And he says, there's only one place I'd come back to. If not the Houston Texans, I will talk to the Pittsburgh Steelers because his brother TJ is there and he likes Mike Tomlin. Keep an eye on that. Would he come back for camp on a full schedule? Would be an insurance policy guy that comes back in case they have significant injuries. You know, out of football, he's refreshed. He continues to weight train. He is healthy. Him in Pittsburgh opposite Cam Hayward. Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. Chargers. We talked about this extensively, the arrival of Joe Ortiz. And he kept telling us in the media on the Zoom calls, I'm going to churn this roster. That's how I do business. That's how we did business in Baltimore. You know, Baltimore that keeps winning and winning and winning. He's churned this. He's got 13 street veteran free agents have signed. Just signed a number 1 draft pick, an offensive tackle. He was a high number 1 of the Raiders and didn't pan out. His name is Alex Leatherwood. He went to Chicago, went to Cleveland. They made him an inside offensive guard. Has played okay. He's a free agent. He's not going to be a starter, but he's a guy off the bench who can play. So they've just signed Alex Leatherwood, who's huge offensive tackle, and he starred at the University of Alabama. So we'll keep that in mind. The Chargers are just continuing to churn the bottom of the roster to see if they can come across somebody that becomes a contributor, might well be a starter. And of course, they spent their first round pick on Joe Alt, and they moved Trey Pippins inside to offensive guard, and they're suddenly kind of deep, but they're looking more people. I thought Leatherwood would be an established player in the league, and he just really struggled with weight and size. He might have been out of position playing right tackle when they moved him inside, and the Raiders got rid of him. Went to Chicago, played a little bit in Cleveland as a right guard. He played pretty well. So this bears watching as we go into July. Going into August will be more acquisitions, I think, coming in the front door.
Yeah, that's exciting, right? I mean, this guy gets another shot. By the way, Leatherwood, isn't that a great NFL name?
Yeah.
It's like the kid that played at Notre Dame. Well, he was Stonebreaker.
Yeah.
You know, I just love it when those kinds of names get into the league. You know, and then as far as the Steelers and J.J. Watt, why did he retire in the first
Injuries.
place?
He just kept getting hurt. And it was just combat, friendly fire. Guys falling on his knees and fractured ribs and all that. And he's been a really great pass rusher. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer. Maybe he is. But the amount of rehab time he spent, he just was off the field a lot with just a lot of nagging junk. And finally woke up and said, no mas, no more. Now he's been away from it for a year. He dabbles in TV, and I think he's pretty good at that. But he's still young enough. I don't even know that he's 31 or 32 yet. So maybe some gas left in the tank.
Aren't there 3 Watt brothers?
Yeah, there was the fullback, Derek Watt, who played for the San Diego Chargers, and he bounced around. I think he was in Indy, might have been in Jacksonville, but the fullback has kind of gone away like the $2 bill.
Yeah,
you know, they're just
Lorenzo Neal.
Yeah, it's not part of anybody's offense anymore. I think he just retired about a year ago. But they got TJ, and maybe they're going to get JJ. We'll pay attention for headlines out of Pittsburgh. Speaking of headlines,
the high-speed sports wire, Lee. I love the high-speed sports wire.
Okay, these are the latest stories. Hey, if there's any auto racing fans out there, I cover it. I touch it. Hell of a lot of guys in media don't know anything about it, don't care about it. We cover it here. This is unique. This Michael Andretti war with Formula One. A lot of people just don't know this. Michael Andretti, IndyCar fame, Andretti Autosports, put together a $250 million offer, applied for membership to Formula One, wanted to build his own F1 team. They rejected it. They deny that it's an anti-American sentiment. The feeling is we have 10 F1 teams. If we add an 11th, even if we take the $250 million and cut it in the pie, it's going to take away a lot of our revenue that go to our European teams. We don't want to do that. So then Andretti said, I'm not giving up. A couple weeks ago, Andretti announced they were opening a factory at Silverstone, the road race course in England, to build F1 cars. Cadillac engines will power those cars. Last week, he hired a guy by the name of Peter Simons, who was the second highest executive in F1's hierarchy. Peter Simons built championship teams for 4 different F1 cars. So that's the background. Andretti is going full force ahead, even though F1 rejected the first application. said, come back and see us in 2028. Well, he says, I'll be back in 2026. Now, get this. F1's president yesterday makes the comment, Andretti should not apply for a charter as an expansion race team. We don't need 11. I recommend Michael Andretti and all of his sponsors buy one of the troubled teams that we have. And there's about 3 teams that are just really struggling, don't have the resources, aren't competitive. But I sense from auto racing people that I network, Andretti doesn't want to do that. He wants it to be his own clean piece of paper. His people, his philosophy, Cadillac engine builders, with Peter Simons designing it. He does not want to purchase the U.S. Haas 1 team, which has had no success for 5 years. Mm-hmm. He does not want to purchase the money-troubled Alpine team that can hardly compete, because he doesn't want to inherit their contracts, their drivers, their buildings. He wants it done the Andretti way. It'd be fascinating to see where the story goes. The other big story, nobody saw this coming. Tony Stewart, legendary NASCAR driver, is folding his teams. He owns 4 NASCAR teams with 4 young drivers, 2 Infinity race teams for the developmental series. That's 6 teams that he's folding. They had a very tearful staff meeting over the weekend announcing they were folding 6 teams, 300 employees on waivers.
Wow.
And he says the cost of trying to build championship teams is so expensive, and they've lost some sponsors along the way. We just can't keep doing this any longer. So that's a bit of a shockwave. Now, he owns 4 charters. That's what they're called, the ownership paperwork for 4 different NASCAR teams. He's going to ask for 20 to 40 million per team to sell the charter to. John Riley wants to start his own team. Michael Jordan is a part owner. Brad Daugherty, the NBA, is a part owner. Hockey players are part owners. Saudi Arabian groups own some of the NASCAR teams. So he's going to try to get 20 to 40 million per, but him leaving racing is a bit of a shocker. Quick comment on Scottie Scheffler. I don't know how you do not obey a police officer. I don't know how you walk away from an issue where the police officer fell down as you were driving away and you dragged him. I don't understand how you negotiate your way out of a felony assault charge you get by the police officer and for the traffic violations. But Scheffler said, I'm not pleading guilty, and I am not accepting a plea bargain. This was a misunderstanding. Louisville police, who criticized the lead officer for how he handled it, have dropped the charges. No charges at all, so he leaves. And one other note in golf. Chris Riley, a longtime PGA member, won a few tournaments, came to the University of San Diego at a young age to become their coach.
Nice.
He led the Toreros to 5 NCAA tournament appearances in golf in 7 years. He just retired. Chris Riley's looking for his golf clubs. He's going on the Senior Champions Tour, and he will play with that select group. Cool. He just wants to get back at it, but he did a really nice job without a lot of resources. University of San Diego golf. John, you got things to talk about here. Rip something off the hot headline page.
Look at that list. There's a lot of good stuff on there. First of all, the F1 situation with Andretti, the thing that wigs me out is they want to keep it to 10 teams, and it is so close-minded. It's like a zero-sum mentality. When you add one, other people lose, When you add teams, the pie gets bigger. You're not slicing the pie into narrower slices.
Yeah, and they got 3 races in the States, and they want to expand the schedule to 5. Of course, there's lots of money here. Well, there'll be more money if Andretti comes in, too. Now, I don't think it's a snap of the fingers they're going to do well. It takes a long time with engine building and with downforce packages and chassis to build a competitive F1 program. U.S. Haas, which was an American-based team out of North Carolina, has been there 5 years and has just struggled. They got all the money in the world. So I'm just surprised they're treating Michael Andretti and his heritage and his history the way he is. But tell you what, that guy is stern. We're going to do it. We're doing it at Silverstone. We're doing it with Cadillac, and I'm going to apply again. I think there's going to be global pressure on F1 to let this guy become part of the fraternity.
Doesn't it seem weird to you that when Cadillac is an engine for NASCAR? I mean, I always think of that's the car your grandfather drove, so it's funny. The other comment I'll make with Scottie Scheffler is I was reading that the video evidence did not match what the police officers were saying. So the police officers were essentially lying, and that undermined their case. And from my perspective on this whole thing, it did seem kind of ticky-tacky. Did he maybe a traffic violation? Sure. But I don't think this needed to be a felony.
Well, there's no video of the cop being dragged because the cop was chastised because he did not turn on a video on his shoulder, which could have taped it. Mm-hmm. And they don't have any other video of Scheffler driving away. But since when? And I don't know. It's the mindset of the athlete. Well, I don't have to do what that cop says. I'm just going to continue to drive towards the gate to go to the Valhalla Country Club so I can practice for the next round of golf. When do you not do what a police officer says? And they were really angry. Some of the language I heard on one of the other videos, they were angry that cop didn't pull a gun on them in the car.
Well, they were probably really hypersensitive because of the tragic,
fatality.
Yeah. So I get that. I know this just all seemed very overblown.
Okay. So that's where we are. This podcast is brought to you by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. A reminder, they are offering all of our Hacksaw podcast viewers something unique, a free eye exam and a discount on frames. If you've got eye issues or you're ready to get an eye exam, go there. Make sure you tell them, hey, thanks for being part of Hacksaw's podcast. Call them, set up an appointment, free eye exam. And by Dixieline Lumber Home Centers, 9 locations to serve you in San Diego. Does not matter what the project is. Dixieline will get you there in 2024. John, do you think we have a few people with a few opinions about the few topics on the table today? Look at this fans forum list.
We do. I mean, Angel is chiming in a lot. He's got a lot of comments. We'll get to some of his in a moment. Let's go to Willie first. He says, Bronny is G League bound.
Well, the agent says we're not taking a G League contract. The agent's trying to force a guaranteed contract, even if he's taken in the second round. That historically has not been the way the NBA has worked. I think the kid should have come back to USC, and he should have played for Musselman and had another banner year. I mean, there's no doubt that he's an explosive, great athlete. But the fact was he was an 18-year-old freshman that averaged 4 points a game, lost his starting job at USC. And I get tired of this whole legacy thing. My kid's going to the Ivy League because I was in the Ivy League, and he gets in the front door whether he's got no grades or lots of grades. This is a little bit of LeBron and the legacy thing. It'll be interesting to see where he's drafted. ESPN, which does a phenomenal job slotting players, has him 54th. There's only 60 picks in the draft. The draft is only 2 rounds long, and second-round picks don't get guaranteed contract, though the agent is trying to change that. And John Riley says,
well, is he 54 in their slot because that's where the Lakers are picking? Because I can't imagine any other team picking him. And by the way, when I've looked at these mock drafts, I don't see Jaden Ledee's name anywhere.
Yeah.
And how in the heck could Bronny be taken over Ledee? That doesn't make any sense.
Legacy.
Yeah.
Period, exclamation point. Next question.
Okay, let's go here. We'll get Angel involved. He says, Negro League deserved to be in Cooperstown.
Here.
And as for the records, I would keep it separate. One for the majors and one for Negro League, just like they do with the AL and the NL.
Well, except the AL, NL composite records, all-time batting average career, all-time single season, those are records for both leagues. But these records are so skewed. And I wrote a column today. Read my one man's opinion column. I'm getting reaction from baseball people about what I wrote. Some don't agree with me. Others say, we should consider that. Go to my website. Just read my one man's opinion column. If you subscribe, you'll get that emailed to you immediately. I'd like to see separate, but then again, we get into this freaking thing, separate but equal, AKA integration. It's a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, separate but equal, we fought wars against that. We've had huge groundbreaking legislation in America to overcome that. So Major League Baseball shouldn't have separate categories. They should all be part of one, but just tell the full story. And I think then it's explained and it's within the proper context. But no doubt, this is a tricky time with woke and political correctness and trying to do the right thing. You said maybe MLB did this out of guilt. I'm sure that's some of it for rightful reasons. But on the other hand, I mean, they have to recognize these stars who I think could have been stars in Major League Baseball in the 30s and 40s.
I have no problem with the stars being in the Hall of Fame. What they should do in the records section, just put all the Negro League stats, all the unbelievable statistics on one side, and on the other side, put the Ty Cobbs and the Ted Williams statistics, and we can watch and we can compare, and then we could argue about
Well, now
them.
You're doing the separate but equal thing.
I know, but there's I'm sorry. The games that were played against the touring Jewish team, the House of David amateurs, and I've seen pictures of them. It was great. And it was great for baseball to sell baseball, but those were exhibitions. You're not having the Yankees game against the Richmond team in the International League, having those stats count.
Well, who wins a game, the House of David or the House of John Fisher?
Oh. Next topic on the table. Thanks, Angel.
All right, let's go down here to David. And he says, is Lincoln Riley on the hot seat at USC if they don't make the playoffs?
They've recruited very well. Thank you, transfer portal. They stumbled upon that starting quarterback, Miller Moss, at the end of the season. He will be the starter opening day. They picked up transfer running backs, transfer wide receivers. There's another wave of guys from the portal. I think Lincoln's going to be good. Obviously, they changed defensive coordinator. It's going to be a very, very different team. Now, he's lost a ton of players. He lost players in the portal. He's lost players to the National Football League. I don't think he's in hot water. I think what he is on the hot seat because of who they're going to play and how much travel. They have to travel 21,000 miles in 11 weeks to play in the Big Ten. And I'll tell you, I am so sick and so upset about the demise of the Pac-12 and what USC and UCLA did. And I don't know any USC fans that I've crossed paths with that think this is really good. And this is really good for the athletes. And it's really fair to all the other athletes because everybody else is going to be traveling to Maryland and Rutgers to play baseball and lacrosse and wrestling and all that. So I just think this is going to be an aberration of a football season. And I think USC and UCLA are going to have a really tough time because they lost a lot of players. And obviously at UCLA, they have a new coach. And yeah, you can be excited about, we're going to play Michigan and Ohio State, but you're not going to play them every year. And they're not coming in your building every year. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to go play at Purdue and you got to go play at freaking Rutgers. I just don't think this is going to work out the way everybody envisioned it.
Well, of course, Michigan and Ohio State are the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. But when SC goes into the Big Ten, you think that they would be at minimum a third or a fourth place team in that conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if everything's going well, maybe one or two. And then UCLA maybe midway through the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's a different type conference. But then again, if Lincoln Riley's got throwers and catchers and runners and that wild offense, maybe they'll ambush some people along the way. But that's a lot of travel, 21,000 miles in 10 or 11 weeks.
And then here teams are cutting back their expenses, because or trying to when they have to just blow all this airplane money. Okay, let's move on to Callan. He says, hey, these NHL playoffs have been remarkable. Which team is feeling the more pressure in their series?
I would have to think the Edmonton Oilers pressure is abominable, because they've been there with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl the last couple of years and didn't get there because they got shaky goaltending. And what's happened in this past week, that goaltender who had a good second season, Stuart Skinner, has gotten shaky again. I've not seen a goaltender let in as many bad angle goals as Stuart Skinner's let in the last two series for the Edmonton Oilers. And the pressure on them is just freaking unbelievable because they've got a generational player in McDavid and a great European player in Draisaitl, and they've worked really hard to put support talent around them, and they're still scuffling. Now, they did come back. They were in a big hole last night against Dallas. They were down 2-0 with the snap of the fingers on home ice, and I thought the fans were going to just boo them off the ice, and instead they came back. They scored 2 goals, and then they exploded in the third period. I think the pressure on Edmonton is much greater than the pressure on the Dallas Stars. And obviously, the New York Ranger Florida Panthers series is kind of a war of attrition because they both got lots of goal scores and they both grind on you and they beat on you, etc. So, and the playoffs are setting records for TV. And that's a byproduct now with all the different networks that we have. John and I laugh about, you got 26 channels that I wouldn't spend any time looking at.
We have too many.
But they're using 4 different networks, and they have an all-time record TV rating for each of the rounds of the playoffs. So the NHL's become a go-to thing to see. And if you look in the stands, see how many young people are at NHL games. I mean, there's a lot of really young hockey fans that are showing up buying these tickets that have bought into the sport. So NHL right now, the arrow is pointed up, but I think Edmonton's the one that's carrying the weight of the globe on their shoulder, definitely the weight of Canada.
Well, that series is tied 2-2. So in the three remaining games, does Dallas have home field or home ice advantage?
Yes. Dallas hosts them next. Next game then goes to Edmonton, and if they have to go to 7, it goes back to Dallas.
Yeah.
But see, Edmonton has won in Dallas. They've proven themselves, but the goaltending is really erratic for the Oilers.
Well, to your other point about the TV ratings up and the young people in the stands, I just love seeing the women get really fired up, when there's a big play or somebody gets checked or, there's a fight. It's fantastic how this sport is just really fires people up.
One of the coolest things Edmonton does, if you watch, if they go back to Edmonton, they play the home game, they sing "O Canada," but they put the guy singing it in the middle of the stands, surrounded with everybody wearing every type of Oiler jersey there is.
Oh, nice.
And he starts and he sings, "Oh, Canada." And then the fans take over the rest of the hymn.
Beautiful.
It is really, really cool. Okay, we move on. Next question. Thank you, the O Canada Network.
Let's go here to John. He says, I'm guessing that there won't be any PGA events in Louisville for a while.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think this was an isolated tragedy and Scheffler got bought up into it. I just have a hard time believing. You might be doing this podcast if I told a police officer I'm not pulling over. You'd be in here doing his anchor's chair because they treat Hacksaw different than they treated Scottie Scheffler. It was complicated. There should have been some type of traffic charge, but it's been dropped.
Well, if it was you get Hacksaw privilege, right? So they say, Hacksaw, come on in,
Yeah, give me your car keys.
Yeah.
Sit in the back seat.
Yeah, they're going to be. They have a nice rotation going on over there. They'll be back in Louisville. Yeah, how do you say it? It's not Louisville. It's Louisville. Louisville.
Thanks, John. Next question. Fans Forum.
Let's go to Fans Forum. Yeah, and we got a bunch of guys here that want to get involved. Here, this is a good one, and this is from Jen, your Realtor Pro. She says, I can't believe the Padres opted to wear those hideous uniforms against the iconic Yankee uniform. So embarrassing.
Oh, you're talking about City Correct. I think they're kind of snazzy. When they first came out, I said, oh, there's a softball game on TV. But it kind of grew on me. And obviously the color scheme works. And I will tell you, the City Connect uniforms the Padres have are better than probably most of the other uniforms. There's some that are full color, like the White Sox, full color black. It looks like you're going to a funeral. Well, White Sox baseball is a funeral this year. But, the ones that are all the solid colors, I don't like at all. The Angels have kind of a unique script on theirs, although I think theirs look kind of funky. I didn't like the Dodger one, but if you could come up with an alternate logo that kind of grabs you, Arizona's got the colors and it got a cactus. It's kind of cool. You need to develop something. Washington Nationals, just don't put WA on the front. Do something with a silhouette of the state capitol or something. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh's got PGH. Come on, do something with the pirate.
Yeah.
There's lots of creative things they could have done with the City Connect, but I think the Padres, they have the most color. Although I guess you don't like lime sherbet, so you wouldn't like the color of the uniforms.
Well, when you see them for the first time, your jaw is on the floor. Like, what the heck is this? But when the Padres rolled it out, they had that video and you could see how they came up with the idea because it's a lot of the Baja California influences and the color schemes that are popular there. And once I understood the whole picture, I went, oh, this is a home run. This is a great thing.
It's like the Giants are orange and white, but the Giants have the Bay Bridge silhouette.
So the Golden Gate Bridge.
Golden Gate Bridge, whatever it is. That signifies San Francisco. It's kind of cool.
It is. That's well, I don't like the gradient where the numbers and the names, like it fades from orange to white. That's not good. But it's just weird against the Yankees because that's the classic uniform that has never changed in millennia. And the Yankee uniform, by the way, it's kind of cool how they don't put the names on the back of the jerseys at home, but they do on the road, right? No, not even on the road.
Not on the road.
Well, the Giants do it on the road, but not at home. And so just little nuances like that, I think, are cool with the uniforms.
Yes. So we got Jenny here is kind of really angered that the Yankee uniform is polar opposite to the City Connect Padre uniform. Yeah, I get it, but I do like the Padre uniforms. Okay, next question.
Okay, let's go here to Plum Wine. Talking about Bill Walton. It says, Bill was the best basketball player I have ever seen when he was healthy. He was also unselfishly the best passer. His 60-0 win team's run was the best experience as a Bruin I could ever imagine. Rest in peace, my friend. Signed, Jerry.
Cool guy. He was, as John and I talked off the air and we text back and forth because he doesn't have any friends and I don't have any friends. He was eclectic. He was eccentric. He was electric. And he was such a well-meaning person. I wrote a column yesterday with some of the national quotes that I had dug up of what people said about Bill Walton. It's just fabulous how he was just universally respected, even though he was off tangent all the time. And you liked him because you got tie-dye T-shirts and all that too. So good man, really good man. A couple social media shots you want to get in here?
Well, yeah, but I just want to make a comment on Bill Walton. I've been watching a lot of the video highlights. And yeah, the passing by him is remarkable. Yeah. I mean, the way he dishes the ball, because usually big man gets the ball in the paint and they just, it's just one-on-one and they're going to go to the hoop.
His whole thing was passing, defense, and rebounding. I don't think he really cared about scoring. Although in that NCAA tournament game against Memphis, he went 21 for 22 shooting the basketball. Amazing. He was an amazing person.
Okay, let's go here. Let's talk a little Lakers basketball. This is from Damio Francisco. 17 championships. I don't blame the franchise. I don't blame AD, but LeBron has issues. Ham had issues. Pelinka is a marginal GM. Hasn't been the same in La La Land since the logo said goodbye. Only one team can be the champ. 29 losers every season. It's basketball at the end of the day.
If I take my pen and I sign my name to that memo, would I screw up the computer? Hey, I signed that memo. I concur with you. Laker basketball, championship banners, that era, West, Baylor, Chamberlain, that era, Wilt, that era, Magic, that era, Kareem, Shaq, Kobe. That era's in the rearview mirror. The Lakers have become a mediocre franchise where suddenly being a play-in team, finishing 8th or 9th that's good. Mediocrity. They need to fix it. They need to get it right. And I think there's so many unbelievable qualities to LeBron, but LeBron can't be player-general manager and have input. I'm not even sure Pelinka should continue to be the general manager. I'm sorry. I'm not even sure Jeannie Buss should be the owner because look at what Jeannie Buss has allowed the franchise to become. That's one man's opinion sitting out here. I guess I'm doing the show from left field now.
Yeah, or somewhere up in the nosebleed seats at crypto.com arena. The Lakers, there's a different standard, in terms of what the fans and the media expect from them. Is that fair or is that unfair?
They built it and they won with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've gotten away from it. You got to get back to it. Clippers have never been to the NBA Western Finals. They don't have any real banners to hang up in their new building. And that ownership has tried really hard and made some good calls and been cursed because of a lot of injuries. So it's just hard for me to understand why there's not been an open revolt from fans in Los Angeles towards Laker basketball. Is Laker basketball, Dodger baseball, the two most important things on the radar in Los Angeles?
Do you think the Lakers are kind of falling into the trap of the Raiders, always going for the shiny object, AD, LeBron, rather than trying to draft players and kind of build from within?
You have to have stars. Everybody had two, then all of a sudden everybody tried to get a third. In some cases it's worked. Lakers have had two, but just have not been able to grow beyond that. And they've tried every conceivable way through first round draft picks, through street free agents, through veteran stars in the twilight of their career. I mean, Rob Pelinka has dragged 33 players in there in 4 years, John. And instead you and I are talking about the spring of play-in game.
They were in the West Finals not too long ago.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get another comment here. More about Padres. This is from JF Lopez. Says, so you're going to quote some clown reporter, talking about Soto, in the New Jersey Reporter. What is Soto supposed to say? I had a terrible time here. You have two problems in San Diego, and that's Tatis and Machado.
Well, Tatis is not the player he was. Manny right now is scuffling. I think it's a byproduct of the elbow injury. And now they got some issues with injuries to both Yu Darvish and Musgrove. So it's not a team that's hitting on 100%. My only problem is Soto is Mr. Me, Myself, and I. That's all he cared about. Now, I understand you got to be a selfish player to be a superstar player. And there was probably a little bit of selfishness as it relates to Tony Gwynn, but he was a great citizen. And I found when I dealt with Soto in that clubhouse, I thought he was standoffish. I thought he was boorish. I thought all the words coming out of his mouth was nothing more than what Scott Boras would say. So I just have a hard time treating him as a hero because the price they paid to get him, he played so poorly in 2022. And his first 2.5 months were god-awful in 2023. And all of a sudden he started to hit and he started to produce, and they wound up having to trade him just because they can't afford to keep him because of the agent's going to drive the price. So I just can't buy everything. Good luck to him. You know, I'll be interested to see if he winds up as a Yankee, at what price, if he winds up across the hallway with the Mets, who have enormous problems right now. But that's the end game of Scott Boras, is to take him to free agency November 1st and play the prices right. Now, it doesn't always work out. Ask his team, the Giants, and Blake Snell, who now 5 starts into his mega career, has a 10.52 ERA and can't get out of the 4th inning.
That is a disaster in San Francisco. But, since, we released this video of Juan Soto, Mr. Me, Myself, and I, it just exploded on Instagram. Like, it's got like about 15,000 views in less than 24 hours. And the funny thing is that picture of him, Mr. Me, Myself, and I, and he's wearing a Juan Soto shirt, a picture of him on his shirt, which is crazy. But yeah, Machado and Tatis are disappointing. I think they're not trying. I think maybe they're trying too hard, especially Tatis.
I think they're a fatigued baseball team. They play a lot of innings. I mean, those 4 established or 5 established guys are just taking a lot of at-bats in their field all the time. So, maybe the Padres need to make a concerted effort to give these guys a blow, let them rotate through DH, get them off their feet a little bit defensively. But it's just not the same group of players. And those guys are making so much money. They can't be moved anywhere. And there's no money left to use to go get anybody else that might plug it in.
Well, they have this June schedule looks achievable. I mean, you got the Angels, you got the Royals, who are, granted, they're good. They got some good pitching, former Padres, but it's not the Yankees in June.
Yeah, but it is Philadelphia.
Okay, Philly's coming, or we're going there either way. But the Padres just need to win like 5 or 6 in a row. And if they can do that, they're going to be in a nice spot. This is the month to do it, June.
Yeah, I don't want you texting me about them losing to the Rockies in Miami and screaming on my cell phone about why the hell this is happening. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed the wide variety of topics on the table. Our podcast is brought to you by these guys, North County Eye Center, Poway, and Escondido. See that phrase, free eye exam? We want you to call them and set up an appointment. And you tell them, Hacksaw sent me from his podcast. I'm coming in for a free eye exam, and let them help you with your eyes going forward. And by DIXILINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 locations to serve you, whether it's windows or doors, whether it's flooring, whether it's closets, whether it's all types of things for your home, kitchen, library, family room, or outside by the pool. Think DIXILINE Lumber. John, take a deep breath. Have a great sports weekend. We'll be back Monday, bonus time.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of NBA, NHL to cover over the weekend. It's going to be great.
And thank you so much for joining us. This has been a phenomenal 16 months since we launched our podcast. Great to have you on board on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps. For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.